recording thing up the top. Okay, so thanks, Liz, for the introduction. What I wanted to talk about today was really my experiences and some of the ideas that we've been developing in trying to make the whole of our practice of the science that we do more open, more available to other people. So I call it The Beginner's Guide to Open Science, and really we're all beginners at this. This is not falsely self-deprecating. Somehow I got to be viewed as a person, sort of a senior person in this area. I've been doing this for about 9 months. This is an area that's moving incredibly rapidly, and so we are very much learning as we're going. Things are changing under our feet as we go, and so it's what I wanted to talk about is really basically what we've done, the tools we've used, the experiences we've had, and a bit about what I think are the important things that need to be developed further before we can really take this out to the wider community. So, divided the talk really into 3 sort of general areas. It's going to be a bit of a grab bag, but that's the kind of division. So why do we want to make our science more open? Why do we want to make it more available? What are we doing? How are we doing it? What are the tools we're using to do it thus far? And where do we see it going in the longer term? So, but before I get too far into that, the question of exactly what we mean by open. There are certainly ongoing and quite strong arguments from a wide range of people about what open access means. What is open data? People are generating definitions left, right and centre of different things and not necessarily agreeing on what they mean. These are some definitions from dictionary.com. I particularly like the one at the bottom. Sometimes I think undecided and unsettled is exactly where we are at the moment. But to sort of put the position of where I am, what we do, rather than try and define anything, is this phrase that Jean-Claude Bradley, who in many ways is sort of the progenitor of this, the type of movement that we're involved in, is this idea that there shouldn't be any information you're holding to yourself. The object is to try and make it, everything you do, completely available in the practice of your science. Now that's not necessarily a practically achievable goal, but something to work towards. And so what we're interested in is seeing how we can go about doing these things, particularly in the process of describing what we're doing. Okay, so that's what happens when you do things. So why are we doing this? Why are we interested in trying to expose the entirety of our work to the outside world? Well, I mean, what motivates scientists in the first place? It's not the money. There's a certain amount of sort of fame and glory that people are after, as much as in any field. But what really motivates people, a lot of scientists, is this idea in the back of their head, I think, and not necessarily quite really figured out. They want to do some good. So this is a map of countries in the world with malaria risk. Malaria is a serious public health problem worldwide. It's a fairly underfunded health problem worldwide in terms of developing new drugs and effective treatments for stopping malaria. So some of the things that motivate people are these kind of statements. You want to do something about that. And people would like to think that, you know, we can do something about that by looking at new compounds, new assays, new mosquito nets. That by doing these things we can make a difference. Again, HIV drug therapy is a problem that people are forever finding out the drugs aren't working anymore. What can you do about that? Can you develop new compounds, better therapies, Can we understand how drug resistance arises? So these are, if you really scratch the scientist, there'll be something underlying here. They want to do something. They want to help people, make the world a better place. We could add other things here like CO2 levels are rising. What are we going to do about it? This morning, anyone listening to the radio this morning, what was the biggest news story in the Western world? 16 million people on antidepressants, which don't work. Why are they on antidepressants in the first place? Might be a question. I'll come back to that later on in the story.
It's probably the news that they're hearing each morning.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Listening to the news.
So these are the kind of things that, that motivate people to do science. But then if we look at what science of people do, now this is a figure I've made up. It's not based on any particular piece of research. It's not, but it's broadly consistent with my experience of what we do in my laboratory. And what I mean by that is that 90% of the work we do is never published, is never made available. The vast majority of the government-funded science in this country and in the US is never published. Some of that's repeat data sets, some of it doesn't add to the story that's in the big paper, but it's still data that could be useful for other people to solve other problems, maybe to solve some of these big problems. And then if you ask the same question about commercial science, drug research, that's even less. And then putting aside the fact that most of what's published is inaccessible to most people. So the story on Radio 4 this morning about these, the antidepressants, turns out the paper was published in PLOS Medicine, which is an open access journal. So a patient hearing that on Radio 4 this morning can actually go to the paper and see what it says. I've only read the abstract so far, it literally came out this morning. But the abstract's pretty clear about what's going on, saying that for most people with mild depression, these drugs do not have a statistical effect. What's possibly more important, given that there's probably going to be an awful lot of people, 16 million in the UK, ringing up their doctors this morning to ask why they're on these drugs, is the doctor can go and read that paper, come to some sort of conclusion about what they might want to do about it. So we want to do things to change the world, but most of what we do is never made available. That's a serious problem. So what's this picture of? It's actually a picture of a trapdoor spider. So this is a stick being used to open up the trapdoor spider's hole. So the question really is, can we use the resources we have, both the knowledge we have and the expertise, and can we, by making things open, by making those available to the wider world, more effectively achieve these aims? And I think, in fact, that's a no-brainer. We can. The question is, are we willing to put the effort in and overcome the cultural issues in making things open that will allow that to happen?